It's Sunday the 23rd of August, the day that in 1997 the superstar that is Jose Dominguez made his Spurs debut. This is your e-Spurs podcast.
Come on, you Spurs! Come on, you Spurs! Come on, you Spurs! Come on, you Spurs! Tottenham, no one can stop them. We're gonna do it like we did last year. Tottenham, no one can stop them. We're gonna do it like we did last year. Tottenham.
Welcome to the show. If you're a first-time listener, welcome along to the e-Spurs podcast. We record each and every Sunday night throughout the season. And if you like what you hear, as we always say, there's multiple ways to get in touch with all things e-Spurs. And new for the new season, there's a few brand new ways to get in touch with us, subscribe and follow us on the many platforms that already exist. You can, of course, follow us on Twitter at @e_Spurs if you don't. On Facebook, e-Spurs page, all one word. And new for this season, we've now got a Google Plus page and a YouTube page. So if you're down with the kids and can work that sort of stuff, you're better than I am. And give us a follow on YouTube and Google Plus, where all of our podcasts go live on those platforms. If you want the links for those, check out the website. They're far too long for me to mention at this time of night. And you get much more on the site there, including articles, reviews of games, and a bit about the e-Spurs podcast. That's www.espurs, all one word, .blogspot.co.uk. We've also got over, I think it's 30 Twitter accounts covering different areas of the world, from USA to New Zealand to Australia. So all of that's there for you to get in touch and stay in touch with all things e-Spurs. Tonight, lads, we'll be looking back at a lively, edge-of-your-seat, thriller-minute game on Saturday versus Leicester. Wasn't it just? Previewing the Saturday tea time tester against Everton next week. Plus, in our social media debate, we'll be asking, is Pochettino under pressure yet? Or will Levy back his man this time? Before we start talking Spurs, it's time for you guys out there listening to do some work and get those thinking caps on. Now, you're about to hear a clip of a former Spur with just one problem. We've disguised the former player's voice. Here's the clip, and as I say, we'll reveal the answer at the end of tonight's show.
It was my first cup final for Tottenham in 1987. We had a great year that year. We came third in the league, semi-final of the League Cup, and of course final of the FA Cup. We're up against Coventry. We were the total favourites to win the game. We had a great season, playing some great football. Clive Allen scored 49 goals as our lone striker that year. So yes, I went into that game very confident.
So on with the show, and before we kick off, as always, let's introduce the team for you tonight. First up over in Chicago is Mark Ashhead. Mark, how you doing, buddy?
Doing all right. I'm ready to vent some frustration over the last 2 weeks since I missed last week's.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. We've been speaking before the show. I know there's a little bit you want to get off your chest. So, as always, this is the 4 and 4 that. And we're going to go from Chicago, not too far over to Barbados now. It's John Coppin. How you doing, mate?
I'm good. Hi, everybody.
Hi, John. Good to have you on with us. And Coatsy and Adi are away this week. Adi is away on holiday. The man who has more holidays than Judith Chalmers. He'll be back next week. And John is away tonight also. He'll be back for next week's show. But what we do have for you, as always this season, we introduce a Spurs supporting guest to the show. We've had the likes of John Ellis and Ator on the show, speaking about their Spurs supporting past. And tonight, I'm pleased to introduce to you another Spurs fan. It's John. How you doing, mate?
Yeah, very well, very well. Thanks for having me on.
No problem, buddy, no problem. Now, we're speaking before the show, and you try and get over to Spurs as much as you can, mate. What do you make of the atmosphere so far this season at the Lane? Have you had a chance to get over to the Lane this season?
Yeah, I was at the Stoke game. I think it's a problem that's been creeping in really over the last few years, whereby I used to think it was me, and it was just me always sat next to the guy that wants to have a whinge. But I'm starting to think I was wrong.
Yeah, it's a strange one, isn't it, mate? Because I remember, going back 5-6 years ago, just before that Champions League season, there was a great atmosphere. You used to have the drummer over there, which, some people liked, some people didn't. But the atmosphere, seems to have dipped.
Yeah, most definitely. I think, to be fair, with the drum, that's obviously the club's fault. They wanted to ban that, and they went ahead and flexed their muscles.
Yeah.
And did so, although they did let it back once or twice last season, if I recall. But it's just, I actually think it's probably the age of the average fan nowadays.
Yeah.
Because, I've been on the season ticket waiting list for 6 seasons now, and I'm starting to knock on a bit myself. I'm 30 now, but the average age of a season ticket holder, I believe nowadays, is like mid 40s. Now you got someone who's in the mid 40s. I reckon they're more likely to not want to get up and have a sing. They're more likely to be a bit more cantankerous and have a whinge.
Yeah,
I
it's
think
an
that's the
interesting
problem.
one, isn't it, mate? Because obviously with the safe standing debate coming back into play lately, you wonder, if maybe that'll help things. Obviously, we mentioned big Spurs fan. Just tell us a little bit about how it all started. Was it a family thing with you? We've heard from people in the past who say that sometimes it was a game that they watched that caused them to support Spurs and start a lifetime of misery. But what was it with yourself?
Well, it was a bit of both, to be honest with you. It's because my mum and all 4 of her brothers are all Spurs fans. My dad doesn't like football at all. So, it was a bit of a family gathering for the 91 Cup final, mate. I was 5 at the time.
Yeah.
And, that was the first sort of time I was conscious of what was going on. I remember the Gaza tackle on Mabbott lifting the cup and that. And, best part of 25 years later, here we are.
Brilliant. And the rest, as they say, is history, mate.
Indeed, mate. Indeed, yeah.
Well, listen, John, good to have you on with us, mate. We're going to get into some Spurs chat, and I'm sure we'll hear from you throughout the show. But thanks, mate, for coming on tonight.
No worries. Up the Spurs.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. Up the Spurs. Come on, you Spurs. Let's get on with the Spurs chat, lads. Back to yesterday's game against Leicester. We said last week it was going to be a tough game, didn't we? And as always, we asked the lads on the show last week for their predictions. Here's what they thought would happen at the Lane on Saturday.
Straight after yesterday, I was a little bit worried about the Leicester game, but now I'm more so, there's a bit of pressure on us. I think we'll get the win and I think we'll burst their bubble. And I'm going to go with the usual 2-1 AD.
I agree with Coatsy. Oh, you know me, I'm a big stats man, and Leicester City winning 3 Premiership matches on the trot is inconceivable. Therefore, I believe we'll at least get a draw, but I do think the Spurs will win.
Yeah, it's a tough one. It's a tough one to call because I can't see us having a shutout. I can't see us keeping a clean sheet. But I think they're due a beating. So I think we'll just nick it. It's going to be a few. It's going to be squeaky bum time for some of it though. But I think they'll sneak 2-1.
So that's what we thought. So far, the success rate of our team is about 0. So if there's anything to learn from our predictions, it's don't listen to a word we say. Lads, it was always going to be a tough game, as we say. Let's start with Mark. It was tough, but we didn't help ourselves necessarily, did we?
No. Going into the match, you look at the starting 11, and my first question was, where's the creativity? Who's going to create a goal out of this team? And it was a perfect opportunity for Eric Lamela to get, a full 90 run out against a team where Leicester's playing very well or not, they're not a top 6 team. They're not a top half of the table team. So while they're playing great, you would expect a player like Lamela, who comes with a lot of expectation, has a ton of talent to really stand out and kind of impose himself on the game like this. He didn't. Harry Kane continues to be isolated and starved for service. And some of the opportunities he creates for himself, he's tracking players down 20 yards, pressing and doing it all on his own. That's not sustainable. So you just feel bad for Harry Kane. It's from top down. There's just a lot of frustration. It's not necessarily that we're not good enough. It's we're not playing as a team. We're still, slowing down movements. We're still not playing entertaining, attacking football. It's just a ton of frustration. And that's what I went into yesterday's match without any optimism, really. Leicester, I think they've won 28 of the last 33 available points that they've played. But still, as a Spurs fan, you expect to go into King Power Stadium and put on a good showing, even if it is just a draw. And we didn't see that. And, 3 games into the season now, it doesn't look like there's much improvement on last year. And we're trotting out the same 11, expecting different results. It's maddening. It's really just frustrating.
Yeah, it was. And John Coppin, we went into the game without Rose. We knew that anyway. And Ericsson was a late injury that we had to cope with and contend with. What did you make of the formation that was put out yesterday and the players in particular that were picked?
He's doing the same thing week in, week out, really, a bit of a mix and match. Going on what Mark was saying, there wasn't a lot of flair there, but the most alarming thing was the lack of pace. We've got no pace in the side. So, even if he'd have played Lamela as a 10, which is probably his best position if he has one, there's no pace. So it's going to be very hard for us to really open teams unless we address that. We need width. That is a given. It is obvious we need width, but we got no pace in the side. So without pace and without width, we are just passing it sideways. There's no movement. No one running on to stretch a defense. We're going to struggle for goals this season. We will struggle playing like this. I can't see where the next goal is going to come from.
Just to pick out a few stats, lads, from the bits and pieces that I've seen. Shots on goal, 19 we had to their 13, so we was ahead on that. Shots on target, 6-2. Again, we was ahead. Possession, we had 66 compared to their 34. So the stats would say we pretty much dominated the game. And the one that I'm most surprised about was passes completed. That's a massive 440 we had compared to 180 they had. So almost 300 more passes. John, welcome to the show. The stats say we dominated. Was it that type of game?
It's not really. I mean, I'm not really a big stats man anyway, to be honest with you. I mean, if you go by stats, Lamela should have been in the team of the season ahead of Coutinho last season. So, I mean, I agree with what everything that's been said so far. There is a lack of pace. It's just I don't want to blame Pochettino because I don't really think it's his fault. But since he's been given all the tools that he's asked for, he's been given Paul Mitchell, and we have spent a fair bit since he's been there. He's just, what do we do next? That's what worries me. But as far as the game went yesterday, I would have took a point, to be fair, before the game, which is, as Mark said, playing Leicester, that's quite alarming, really. Yeah, I weren't impressed too much, to be honest.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. And, you mentioned there the confusion over whether or not it's Pochettino to blame, if you like, for want of a better phrase at the moment, or the players. And we asked this question again yesterday on the social media, and we had mixed response. My initial thoughts were that, if you want players to move around a bit more, that's something that's down to the coaching. Where do you stand on that one?
I just think the problem is at the moment, a lot of the players that we have, especially in midfield, are very much the same. There's no real, like when back in the day, I don't like talking about it because it's depressing, but when you got the likes of Bale, Modric, Van der Vaart, even Lennon back then, they're all very different. And I don't think there's as much, there's not really much to pick from. I think as far as the team he put out, it's probably the best he could have done. But, I think it's a little bit like round pegs and square holes, I think, at the minute, like putting Dembele out wide, and obviously Ericsson worked there, which doesn't help. And the thing is, that all that worries me with that is we have one player injured of them sort of three behind the forward, and it does look very weak straight away. Yeah.
There's a lot of confusion at the moment, I think, over the team. Mark, yesterday, looking at the bench, it was interesting that of our summer signings, only one was in the team, and the likes of Wimmer is not even in the squad at the moment. Trippier's on the bench. So, we made 3 or 4 signings. 3 of those haven't even made it to the first team yet, where you think the club would be normally looking to strengthen that first team. So, again, the transfer strategy, if you like, comes into play, doesn't it? And questions around that.
Yeah, I think the rebuild that Pochettino is attempting to really partake at this club, it's kind of twofold, right? So right now we're clearing out a lot of players that take up space in the wage bill. They take up space in the practice field, taking away from sort of the youngsters. So it's step one that we're clearing out players that aren't needed. The frustration I think that we can all share in is, well, I can understand if you don't want these players, you get them out. But you can't then put Eric Dyer into the defensive midfield role and expect him to compete with the likes of Schneiderlin and when he came on Schweinsteiger and even against Leicester. I mean, he's doing a very respectable job. But you're asking these players, as John said, to do something that they're not accustomed to. And I mean, out of all the signings, really, Alderweireld was really the only one for the first team, for the first 11 right now. I think one of the most frustrating things for me is Xherdan Shaqiri is bought 4 days before a game, and he's ready to go. I mean, he didn't play because of the suspension, but you know that other teams buy a player and 1 or 2 training sessions, they put him in the squad. Well, Clinton Ng very clearly fills a need and has a very clear role to play on this team. And it's not complicated. A player like that, run at the defender, track back, and make late runs in the box. We're overcomplicating things, I think. And I'm going to wait until the end of the window to really judge, Pochettino's picks for the transfer window. But you could easily say that he really hasn't had his way in the transfer window yet. A lot of our first choices were snapped up by others. And now we're facing the last 2 weeks where, we're struggling for these targets, and who knows if we even get those in. So I'm wavering right now between it being Pochettino's fault or not. I'm wavering between whether he should just let the youngsters have a run. I'm wavering between, he should change formation. I think there's just too many uncertainties to really judge him yet. I think we can all agree that it needs to be better.
Yeah, absolutely. But I tell you what, I'm all for him giving the youngsters a run, as you say there. My concern is that the youngsters have to be good enough. I think at Spurs we're so, not necessarily the fans, but the directors and the management are so desperate at the moment to get Spurs youngsters into the first team that sometimes the quality is sacrificed. In that, I think the one shining light from yesterday, John Coppin, was obviously Dele Alli. Came on, made a difference straight away. Just how good can Dele Alli be, do you think?
Oh, he's a talent. I think he'll go all the way. He's ready to play. His problem is obviously he's going to come into a team now where it's not a settled team right now. We're scratching around. It would have been really good for him to, for example, just be a piece of a jigsaw where there's a settled team and he could have just fit in, done his bit. But right now, there's nobody there, even though he's a young player, that he can really hold his hat up to and say, this is the guy I'm going to follow on, because we've got guys in the middle of the park, whether it be Dembele and Lamela and people like that are in and out. The only genuine starter is Eriksen. So he's very much one of. What would have been better for a young player like that is if there was a given squad. In other words, he knew straight away in the season, I'm going to get X amount of games, or this is going to happen, and he could set his stall out. But right now, there's nothing to lose with playing him. But he definitely will develop into a high-quality player. It's just, obviously, for now, he's playing in a team that is, I wouldn't even say we're low on confidence. We're just not got any fluidity because of the lack of pace. And it's not going to help him.
And can I vent on that for a second? We talk every week. It seems I'm the biggest defender of Christian Eriksen. I think we really don't have anyone else on the squad that can produce what he can. People are criticizing him. Eric Lamela doesn't even show up for these games. We bring on Dele Alli, a $5 million 19-year-old signing, and he looks like a world beater compared to Eric Lamela in every single minute he's played so far this year. And what does that say towards not only the quality of our squad or what the coach wants, but our expectations? I mean, the one player who really is our chief creator, we still, I look at the message boards and the forum, people still doubt whether Christian Eriksen is a linchpin of this squad, and everyone argues over Lamela. I mean, I just need a vent. I just wanted to rant right there. That
you mentioned Lamela there, mate, and John, do you think we're now starting to see the end of the Lamela experiment, if you like? Are the patients starting to fray a little bit now?
I would say, yeah. I mean, the point that was made a moment ago is very true. You get signing players that are ready and they hit the ground running. That never seems to happen with us. No. Or when it does, it's very rare. And I think, it's his third season now. He really should be doing better than he currently is, I'm afraid. I think the only reason he's still there, really, if he'd have cost $5 million, I think he would have been gone by now. I just think it's because of the amount of money that was spent on him. Levy's being a bit, as you can understand, he wants the manager to persevere with him, and hopefully, even if he doesn't set the world alight for us, just to get some money back as much as we can when he does go.
Yeah, look, it looks like that, doesn't it? Because he's in the team on a regular basis and he's being subbed on a regular basis, and you kind of feel sorry for the lad because it's opening him up to more mockery, isn't it? If anything, because I've started to see on social media, I spend a lot of time on social media because of the e-Spurs stuff, and this week was the first weekend when I really started to see that turn against Lamella. There's always been a split, no doubt about it. It's always been a bit 50-50 Lamella, a bit like Marmite. But this week was the first time I think that I started to see people say, that's it, we've given up now, and you kind of feel sorry for him because every time he's put into the team, it's opening him up to more sort of ridicule, if you like. He was bought for big money. It's not his fault, but the guy's just clearly not cut out at the moment for the Premier League, is he? That's, I don't think anyone can deny that. And it's sad to see. And as you say, John, why does it always seems to be us, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, God knows why. But going back to what you said there about especially the social media thing, it's one thing that Soldado never suffered with. I always see a lot of support on there for him, and maybe we got rid of the wrong player. I just think, I mean, at the start of the season, when Poch said Soldado was part of his plans, I really did think, right, well, if we don't get in another Ericsson type, then surely just go again with him, but get Kane in behind him.
Yeah.
I mean, we saw against Leicester, I think a lot of Kane's better work was going backwards. So as much as we don't want him to be doing that, he has got that in his game. He can, go, recycle the ball and do well with it. Like it was his bustling run and pass to Chadley which set the goal up on Saturday. And I just think with someone, good number 10s can make average strikers look decent, in my opinion. Look at Crouchy. Crouchy was, you know what I mean? But he had Van der Vaart behind him.
Yeah, absolutely.
It made all the difference.
Well, that's the thing. And yesterday, John Coppin, we saw, I mean, again, for the third time this season, Harry Kane was he had patches in the game, but for large parts, through no fault of his own, he's been pretty much non-existent, hasn't he? Because there's just nothing behind him.
Nothing, no one running on, no one to create no space. I mean, he's not the quickest, even though he's improved. He's strong. He runs all day. He's a willing worker, but we need that pace urgently. I think then you'll see the real Kane. If you've got someone running behind him and someone to really scare defenders, then they can't really group up on Kane. You'll see a different player, but. Another thing, even though we've covered this ground before, I don't want to go back on it because Poch is stubborn as a horse. But Lennon had his critics. But right now, when you ain't got no pace, it really seems strange to me from day one he made up his mind, I'm not going to use this player. And he's making do with guys who really can't move. Now, that's the only pace we have right now. And he said to him, go and play with the kids. If you've said that to Levy, the first signing should have been a flyer. We've waited till 1 week before the season kicks off to get in Gian, who's got some serious pace. It might be another 2 weeks before he's playing. Look how many points we've dropped already.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. I mean, I'd love to see Aaron Lennon at his peak in there. A lot of people would say he's dipped a lot. I agree with you in that his pace at the moment would be a major asset. Pochettino seems to be very much that style of manager where he will not exile players, but if you're not in his plans, you've pretty much had it.
Well, there's some mixed reports regarding Lennon. I mean, I've read some things like he's been asked to play on the left-hand side and refused in front of the team and refused to sign a new deal. There are a lot of stories regarding Lennon. Outside of him, what other players really have been exiled that haven't deserved it? I mean, Adebayor, there are stories last year about Capoue and some of the French players being an awful influence in the locker room, Kabul. I mean, otherwise, I think he's just being given the authority that a manager should have to craft his team.
Yeah.
But that also means that he needs to be accountable for it. If midway through October we're sitting on 6 or 7 points, then the bell tolls for him. The bell doesn't toll for anyone else.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. Now, listen, we're going to try and keep this as positive as we can because obviously talking about yesterday's game, it's hard to find many positives, but we're going to try to. And John Dembele this season as seems to be another regular in Pochettino's plans. A lot of people said they expected him to be on his way. How has he done so far for you this season?
I think he's done all right, to be honest. I've got a feeling that it might be, a change of attitude, which is maybe made Poch as stubborn as he is, like John rightly said, maybe made him give him another chance. I think he's one of the most frustrating players I've probably ever seen at Tottenham because he's got it. He's such a talented player, but he don't turn it on often enough. And I think he's wide right, really his best position. He's like in front of the back four. He's played pretty much all over for us. I think he is good enough to be in the starting 11. But the one thing that worries me, like we was just saying about Poch being stubborn, he just reminds me of Sven-Göran Eriksson a little bit when he was in charge of England, because no matter how well, if you take midfield as an example, no matter how well other midfielders were playing, Gerrard and Lampard are always going to start. And I just think Poch has definitely got his favourites, because take Eric Dyer as a prime example. Now, I'm not saying for a minute he doesn't deserve to be in the team. He had a really good season last season. But we've got, if he's not good enough to be in your back four, that doesn't mean you should find a space for him in midfield, because he's a defender. I can understand he wants to play him, and he's a promising young player, of course, but he's not a central midfielder. And he's possibly hampering Dembele. We're not going to see the best of him, I don't think personally, wide right, because he does slow the game down, and I think that can be used to our advantage if he's in the middle. Especially if you take Stoke last weekend. All right, I know Dembele was on the pitch, but he wasn't asked to, get in the centre of the midfield there, especially after Arnautovic scored a penalty. And you knew it was coming. No one got hold of it in midfield. And he probably would have been the one. I would have stuck him back there and said, look, just sit there, get the ball, keep it. Because, he doesn't lose it very often. And he is hard to, players don't find it easy to get him off the ball. And I would have just stuck Lamela on the centre circle and said, look, we're gonna have to chuck this over the top, because we got, we're under the cosh, and just have a go. But I think Dembele definitely deserves a run of games without a doubt.
Yeah, absolutely. I can think of a few places I'd like to stick Lamela, but that's another story for another podcast. It is frustrating, and we've spoken on the podcast a few times about whether or not Pochettino's naive in his substitutions. And another thing I've noticed on the social media is people confused over why he sometimes leaves it so late and then makes changes in the way that he does. And again, we've seen in previous games that the Stoke game, the changes he made affected the game, but maybe in the wrong way, and set us on the back foot. So I think he's still got a lot to learn, and we've discussed this to death, haven't we? The fact that we needed a manager who could come in, hit the ground running, and maybe though Levy wouldn't have had his yes man if he'd done that. Something for you to think about. Anyway, but something we put out on the social media earlier on was a Twitter question, if you like, and we asked for your responses to the following subject. We asked, is Pochettino under pressure, or will Levy back his man? Because at the moment, it seems that there's so much confusion at Spurs as to whether or not Pochettino's having the say on the transfers, whether or not Levy's leaving it late and affecting the team, and nobody seems to know exactly who's to blame. So let's just have a look at what responses we got on the social media. Forever Spurs said Levy will back him. Martin Smith said, I reckon Levy will support Poch. I believe Levy knows Pochettino hasn't got the team he's wanted, so until then he'll back his man, which is a fair point. Abdul Akini, hope I pronounced that right, says back him or we will look like clowns again. Poch can't coach speed into slow players he inherited. Great point. And he says Saido and Ng will change things. So optimism there, like that. And Top of the Tree says no, he never does in the long run. Regarding Levy backing his man. And finally, e-Spurs Thailand says we'll make signings this week for sure, but Pochettino may still be under pressure. Our football is dull at the moment. So pretty much sums up everything that we've said so far and why the confusion's still running. Just going back to the social media, after the game yesterday, I thought it would be interesting to do a bit of a straw poll, and we got people's views on the situation at Spurs and Pochettino in particular. And we said, are you confident that Pochettino can and will improve Spurs still? And surprisingly, and I have to say surprisingly because I didn't expect it to be so overwhelming, it was 122 said yes, that he will still improve Spurs, and only 22 said no. So Mark, massively in favour of Pochettino still, according to our very unscientific poll there.
Yeah, I mean, I said earlier I'm sort of wavering between blaming him for things and not, but at the end of the day, as we discussed the transfer window and some of his substitutions, I mean, he works with Paul Mitchell. They tell Daniel Levy, okay, these are the players we want. They don't control the prices. They don't control when they're being bought. So, I mean, I don't fault the coaching staff or the recruitment staff for those sorts of things. That I blame on the chairman and the people negotiating the deals. regarding the football, it's like I said earlier. Right now, he's clearing everyone out. We have not yet seen an influx of Pochettino players to impact our first 11. Alderweireld clearly allows the defense to play a little bit more, but if we do bring in Berahino, then all of a sudden look at the options that we have. We can go 4-3-3. We can go 4-4-2. We can go with the formation we're currently playing. It really expands things. So until he really gets a few of his players in designed to make the first 11, then I think it's he needs to be given some sort of time. But that being said, my patience is wearing thin. I don't think we can go the next 4 or 5 games with winning another point or 3 points. We need to start. We need to start on a run.
Yeah, absolutely. We need to start getting some points under our belts. Otherwise, dare I say it, be back in that Ramos situation of 2 points from 8 games or something like that. And we all know how that of course ended. John Coppin, the football that I saw today on Sky was some great games and some very fast attacking football. And every single game, we've spoken about this, haven't we, before the podcast, that we seem to watch that doesn't involve Spurs. It seems to be that way. Teams move the ball very quickly. It's pass, move. And is that something that Pochettino should be able to coach into the players he's currently got? Or does it need a better quality of players to be able to play that football?
I think it would have to be the quality. I mean, they either can do it or they can't. I think AD's not here, but he's been mentioning that for a long while. Is some of the players that we've been linked with are as good as what we've got, but very few have been far greater. We would have to go for what we would call the old-time Spurs players who would be able to move it around, guys with that great technique. What we have been getting is guys that could run all day and can work, but are not the best. If you look at what we've got now, Eriksen's great talent and Dembele's got ability. He does slow it down and hold the ball, but we haven't got the kind of silky players that we used to have before. When we get those guys in with pace, it's going to improve us, but I still can't see that, how you want that pace and movement. I still can't see it because he tends to like a rigid format. He wants players to fit into a mold, so I don't think we're going to ever play that kind of fast, expansive football. I don't think that's Poch's style. No,
we're still waiting, aren't we, to see this system that we keep being told about. So let's hope that when he gets those players in, we'll start to see that. John, with regards to Levy, we all know what he's like as a chairman in terms of transfers and being frugal and leaving it late. Let's just, for argument's sake, say that things don't work out and a couple of games down the line, things haven't improved. How long can you see Levy giving Pochettino at the moment? Can you see him giving him to the end of the season regardless, or do you think it's a case of if things get much worse, then he'll pull the trigger again?
I've got a feeling that the opposite will actually happen. I think if Pochettino doesn't get backed, we've seen how stubborn he is. I wouldn't be surprised if he actually jumps before he's pushed.
Yeah,
because he can only do so much if he's not given the tools that he needs. But that's another thing that worries me. In regards to the transfer targets that we've been linked with, especially recently, Paul Mitchell's been there now for 9 months or so, and all of a sudden we get linked with Victor Wanyama. That worries me because if he's been there with his magic black box that we've all heard about,
yeah,
and he's scouting players from all over, how many players have we have missed out on for them to say, I'll tell you what, we'll go back to Southampton and pinch one of theirs?
So sorry to push in, John, but on the little forum that we have, I made that exact same comment today. He's supposed to have a black box. Me or you, playing Fantasy Manager, could have picked up Victor Wanyama.
Exactly. That's what worries me, mate. Exactly.
Where's these £4 and £5 million bargains, these deals? Benteke was unknown 4 years ago. The same Victor Wanyama 4 years ago you could have got for $5 million.
Yeah.
Where is these deals that Mitchell is supposed to have, these special players that no one knows about, these hidden jewels?
But the other thing is as well, with both Shaqiri and Pedro have been mentioned on the pod already, and I think the reason why they go straight into the team is because they're good enough. We know they're good enough. And players like Wimmer and NG, we've got no idea really how good they are, how good they're going to be, and it would be too much of a risk, I think, putting them in. Maybe if we'd have won a couple already, then maybe Wimmer might have had a chance already. You don't know, but I really didn't want to be depressing on this show. I really didn't, because
but the players are out there though, John.
Yeah, they are.
Look at that boy that Aston Villa got from Barcelona.
Yeah, he looks all right, doesn't he?
Yeah, but he's only cost about $6 million.
Yeah, no, I know.
And John, there are those people out there that will say that as long as Levy is there as chairman, this is his system, isn't it? You buy players who are young, who won't necessarily get straight into the first team, but when they do, they'll improve, and then you'll sell them on. So there are those out there that say that as long as Levy's there, we're stuck with this system.
Yeah, no, I understand that point. I think, to be honest, I think he's got it into his mind now that all he's got to do is just coast for a couple more years, Levy, and then when more money starts rolling in because of the new ground, then maybe he'll stick his hand a bit deeper into his pocket. But I mean, that's a worry as well, because I genuinely believe that's what he's going to do. I mean, otherwise he would have spent more already on the players that we've clearly needed since last season. It's like as soon as February the 1st came, we still need the same players then that we do now, and there's 8-9 days to go in the window.
And there's a lot of talk or focus on buying either Premier League experienced players or young English players, right? So you're telling me there aren't young English players that, I mean, Dele Alli is an example, great signing. You've got players like Damari Gray who are lauded as being another, future star for the British team. You got Patrick Roberts going to Manchester City. And if we're being frugal and buying these players and holding on to them for a few years before making an impact, why aren't we buying the premier young British players? Even there's no ambition.
I think part of it is because we've got such a young squad. I just think it's too much of a risk. I mean, all the players you've mentioned, like Gray at Birmingham and the Roberts going from Fulham to Man City, we can't, because we haven't got a star-studded team. I think it's too much to put them straight in. There's a lot of trust. It's the same with what Harry Kane's going through now. He's got the weight of the entire club really on his shoulders. He's 22. It's not fair. There needs to be older, more experienced players in the team who can shoulder some of that and show the way for the young.
I agree with that. That's what I was saying earlier in reference to Ali. If he'd have come in like a few years back when we had Modric and all of them, he would have really gone on. But now for him, he ain't got no one to really learn from. He's literally good enough to start, and he's a boy.
Yeah.
He's a baby in terms of the EPL. He's got the ability, but it would have been good if he could have bedded into a team with seasoned players, or at least 3 or 4 players in and around him that every single game, they're starters. But right now, you could put your hand in and pick out 4 players, and any 4 of those could play in the middle, because outside of Eriksen, no one's really safe.
No,
not in the middle of the park.
I mean, if you take into consideration the players that Dele Alli's competing with to get a start, you're talking about Mason, Bentaleb, and Dyer at the minute.
He's all of them already.
Yeah, well, but all that worries me is, all right, he's only made 1 appearance, Dele Alli, but he ain't far behind the rest of them in terms of appearances, is he? Mason's probably got 20 odd, Bentaleb maybe 30 odd. There's no one in there who's a seasoned campaigner, like you said. Young players will come on and develop a lot quicker if they've got good players to learn from. And I think they're all sort of learning all at once, and that's the problem. I don't think Wanyama's really going to change that either, to be honest. But I think I would have, we was linked with Sven Bender for a time, the Dortmund player. He would have been spot on, I think. Schneidlin was obviously another one. But if I was going to spend some money this week, as much as we do, obviously we do need a striker. Defensive mid for me is number 1 priority. Yeah,
I mean, the defensive mid, a lot of Spurs fans have said we need, John. With regards, one player we're going in for, is Berahino. Price that he's been quoted at is what worries me. I mean, you're talking, they've rejected an 18 million bid, so you're probably talking about 20 if we get him. And this is a player who's not got 1 international cap to his name, and it's not his fault, that teams are willing to pay 20 million for him. I mean, for you, he's not a tall guy, is he? So he won't be a target man. We play that 1 up top system. So you're talking about if he plays, he's having a shorter guy up front on his own, because Pochettino doesn't really change the system. I mean, for you, is that one going to work? Is Berahino the man? Is he the answer?
I think he had 14 goals in 38 games last year. That's not too bad. But 8 of them were either penalties or from set pieces. Only 3 of them he got away from the Hawthorns. And yeah, I mean, like you said, it's not his fault, the amount of money that he's been touted for him. But I just think it's because Levy's been playing this game for so long now. I think all the other chairmen are playing a game with him, really, because, they've had it done to them. And obviously he's not worth that amount of money, let's be honest. But would he improve the team? Yeah, I think he probably would.
Well, John, you were just spoken about Mitchell, mate. The point that I'm sort of trying to make there is that we've got 22 million to spend. Are you telling me that there's not a player on the continent better than Berahino that we could get for?
Pedro cost 21.
Absolutely, yeah. That's the worry, isn't it? You think we've got this mythical black box that Mitchell works with, of players across the world. We've got 20 million to spend on a striker, and yet we're spending it on a guy who's not proven at the highest level. It's just smacks of risk again, doesn't it, John?
It does, yeah, most definitely. I mean, we've also been linked with Alexandre Pato. I think he's in South America somewhere after being at Milan. Again, probably don't take a genius to work that one out. But again, he probably ain't good enough, is he? Let's be honest. And the other one, really, who I would probably, if they want 15 million for Charlie Austin, QPR, I would do it. I would have done it months ago, purely because, yeah, he's similar to Harry. But like I've already said, Harry can play in that number 10 behind him, and it's just another. He doesn't have to change the formation. But we've got two strikers on the pitch. If we do need to change something, you don't need a matter change, which we know he's not too great at, is he, the old substitutions? So I would probably go for Austin. I don't want to say it is a Levy type deal, isn't it? That's why I think I can see that one still happening, because it's not too much.
I'd get him anyway because of the amount of the goals he's going to bring to our team.
Definitely. I think you can guarantee it.
Even if you don't change the system, this man's proven in a struggling team, he knows where the back of the net is. And all these players we're linked with haven't shown if they can play at this level.
Yeah, that's the
He
other
could be
worry.
back to Lamella all over again.
Yeah. I mean, although the only other Premier League striker I can think of we've been linked with is Hernandez at Man United.
Yeah.
I think he'd be a good one, but we've never really seen him play 20 games on the spin, starting games regular. He might, maybe he is a super
I don't think he'd fit into our system, though, would he?
Yeah, well, I don't know. I mean, it depends. It's the same as Berahino. I mean, we can say that, he's not very big and all the rest of it, but then one of my favourite ever players was Jermaine Defoe, and I think you get the ball in the right spot for him, and he will put it away. And I think Berahino is that kind of player. He's a lot more versatile than JD was, but still, he's a snappy finisher. And if we have to pay that, we ain't really got much choice now, have we? We don't want to get to September the 2nd with the squad that we've got now. And every other chairman on the planet knows that now. That's the problem.
You know what the irony is we have this philosophy that we're almost allergic to players over 26 years old. Well, look who's 24, 25, 26, 27, 28. Players in their prime, where we need these positions, where we need these players, but they're going to go for their absolute highest fee, for the highest wages, yet it seems so simple to inject, a central midfielder, a crafty veteran like Yohan Cabaye for 12 million or something like that. It makes sense to buy players on the downside of their career, not only to mentor players, but to add that bit of guile and experience into the squad. And that's almost one of our principles in the transfer window, is to avoid players like that. It's a fault in itself.
Yeah, definitely. I would have gone for Cambiasso a year ago when he signed for Leicester, and I probably still would have gone for him this summer before. I think he's gone to Greece now. I think he would have been the perfect kind of player. A bit like, he's a bit of a Scott Parker. You know what you're going to get from him. But for them games where, you are under the cosh like it was last weekend, he's a perfect player. And I think everyone's a bit like rabbit in the headlights, especially in the midfield. When things are starting to turn against us, it's a bit panic. But Cambiasso would have been perfect for me, and he would have been right up Levy's street because he was on a free transfer.
He likes one of those, isn't he, old Levy? And look, lads, it's no coincidence, is it, that under Harry Redknapp, I know there are Spurs fans out there who's still completely against Redknapp. I think he gets a hard ride for what he did for the club, but in terms of the style of football and the Champions League, I think he gets a hard ride. But it's no coincidence, is he, that we were struggling before him, and he brought in players who had that experience, like Scotty Parker, like William Gallas, players at the peak of their game, towards the later end of their careers, no doubt. But they were players with bags of experience. Even Louis Saha didn't get much of a look in, but scored goals at the top level. And it's no coincidence, is it, that we went on to better things with those established players in the side. Whereas, you bring kids into the team, and dare I say it, you're not going to win anything with kids, are you? As a wise old man once said. And I'm not saying we're aiming to win the league, because we're not. It's miles off where we are at the moment. When you look at the strength of the squads, we're not going to do that for the next 5-6 years. We're not going to challenge or anywhere near it. And there are some, including guys on the show, AD and and Coatsy have mentioned a few times, Champions League isn't even realistic this season, but you'd hope that we'd be up and around those positions. But at the moment, it looks as if, unless things change in the next few days, which I'm sure they will, it looks as if mid-table is more the level at the moment, which is a bit of a worry, isn't it? But let's see what happens. I mean, Mark Yarmolenko is another one that you really like, that you've mentioned on the show, and he was coming to Spurs and he wasn't. Everton went in for him, didn't they? And they've pulled out again. So it looks as if there's a concern about the player there rather than it being down to Spurs or Everton. It looks as if it's maybe an injury that he's got there, or maybe they're asking silly money.
Yeah, and with players like that, we just don't know what the reasons are, but. I mean, one of the rumors I saw on Twitter is Zlatan, which is the craziest rumor. It was one of those fake agent accounts. But how happy would we be if even Alira Mendy from Real Madrid, who's kind of mentioned but not in the papers. I mean, players like that can get us excited. We don't have that. Even amongst Berahino, we're fighting. Even Yarmolenko, as soon as we're linked, people write it off as it can't be real. We're not going to go for a player like that. I mean, there's a general malaise and pessimism in the transfer window, and it's on the field too. In the home support in the stadiums that kind of transfers. So I don't know, guys. It's just frustrating.
This is Mark's therapy hour if you're listening to the show tonight, and but that's what we're here for, to get it off your chest. So we're going to move on, lads, to the Everton game on Saturday evening. Another tough game, although having said that, they obviously beaten today, Everton. What do we think? Let's go to, I'll tell you what, John in the UK first. It's going to be always a tough game against Everton, but they're not as hard to beat as they was under David Moyes, are they now?
No, I don't think they are. Plus, the reason why I'm hopeful about the weekend is because the corresponding fixture last year really kicked us on. We had a great performance at home to Everton. Soldado got a lovely goal, and we really did, we kicked on a bit from there, and it was the first really, it was probably, if you take in the early season games, it was the first time where the Pochettino pressing system was fairly obvious, and we did play really well. Their goal, to be fair, was an absolute worldie. Other than that, it was a really good game. We controlled it from start to end. I'm not worried by Everton, to be honest with you. I think I still think we'll be above them come the end of the season, and yeah, I'm really confident about the game.
Yeah, I share that, mate. I think we're gonna, I think like you say, it's the game where we need to turn it around, and we need to get the crowd, on side. We need to make it the day that the new beginning starts, and you'd think we're going to have NG in there, so hopefully that's going to be another plus. Get him in the side, a bit of pace would be nice, and maybe one or two other signings. So let's fingers crossed that'll happen.
Yeah, hope so.
Absolutely, mate. John Coppin, Everton Saturday. Hopefully have Ericsson back, as we've mentioned. A little bit more attacking flair in there. What's your thoughts?
I'm going to do the Coatsy 2-1.
Good old Coatsy. Even when he's away, he's here. Mark, Everton on Saturday, is this going to be the day that it all turns around?
They're playing very well. I actually look at this season a little bit like, for us, like Everton had last year. They started very poorly, and then they sort of came on as the second half came together. And I struggle to be overly optimistic going into any match right now, to be completely honest. And we always play very, very competitive, good games with Everton. 2 years ago, I think there were 2 draws. The year before that, I think it was a draw and a last-minute winner. Last year, obviously, we took some points. I think it's going to be a 1-1 draw. I think it's not going to be especially pretty, but I can't go into any match with a lot of optimism. 1-1 draw. I can't be hopeful for anything more right now.
Well, I was going to say let's get some predictions, shall we? Because let's go across the board and get those. I was going to say prescriptions. We might need a prescription after the game, but let's get some predictions. John in the UK.
We ain't going to keep a clean sheet, are we? So it's going to have to be. I'm going to stick my neck out and say 3-1.
3-1. Do you know what? I'd love that. I'd love to see Spurs just score a couple of goals and have a nice little buffer in there. You know what I mean? Because
yeah, definitely. I think Everton are the kind of team. I think, although they did play well today, I don't want to underestimate it, maybe too much. I'm a bit blasé sometimes, but they will come and they will play, and that always helps us, especially at home when teams do that. We had our best games at home last season when teams didn't turn up to frustrate, because a lot of the time it worked, unfortunately. But when teams who are decent on the ball and they have got some good players, I mean, you just take Arsenal and Chelsea games from last season. Everton you can stick in there as well from last season. And Swansea, they're good footballing teams, and that's where we had our best performances at home.
Yeah, spot on. It's great shout. That space gives us room to play, as you say, doesn't it? And
it does, yeah.
Our creative players in there, a little bit more room. John Coppin, your prediction, mate?
Yeah, 2-1 I'll go with.
2-1. So
because I think even though he's not consistent, I think Lukaku's going to give back to a little bit of a trouble. I don't think they're good players, but I don't think they're up for a fight. If he does anything like he did against Southampton, it'll give us a bit of trouble.
Do you know what? Here's a thought. If we've got 20 million to spend, Everton are a bit short of cash at the moment, aren't they? Why not go and put a 20 million bid in for Lukaku?
He cost 25, didn't he, or 26?
Yeah, Everton are a bit desperate for money at the moment, aren't they? And we need. Do you know what? I've often thought this. We need that beast of a striker, don't we? A bit like Drogba, who can. Bit of a battering ram who can.
A few years ago, we could have got Benteke for 20, and we didn't. So I don't think. I'm just so shocked that we didn't get Benteke for 22, and we're going to spend 20 on Berahino.
Yeah, well, so that's my dreams killed anyway. Thanks, John.
Not necessarily. Listen, right? John Stones is going to leave this week, so we can chuck Fazio in as well. They can't turn that down, can they?
Do you know what? I'd get on the blower to Levy now, and I love it. Mark, your prediction, mate?
1-1.
1-1. So you're going for a draw. Another clean sheet we need to keep, don't we? We need to keep that clean sheet, I think. That's just for Hugo. You've got to feel sorry for the guy, haven't you? One of the best keepers in the world, and not got a clean sheet yet.
Hey, if Danny Rose is playing, I'd put an extra goal on and a 2-1 win.
Yeah.
Does that change anything? I'm shocked that he's not playing. It has to be a fitness thing.
Well, I think, there's rumours of the Chelsea move, but I don't think they're stupid enough to do that, the club. They're stupid in many ways, but I don't think they'd do that.
They just bought the player from, was it Augsburg? Baba Rahman?
Yeah.
Something like that. So, I mean, I don't know. Ben Davies has been doing well enough, but I've got a creeping suspicion that that's also part of Jan's problem, is feeling like he has to overcompensate for Davies on the left-hand side.
Yeah, maybe. I like the way you think, mate. We've got to get Rose back in there and then back to full strength and push on.
Sorry to interrupt. Leicester's goal on yesterday would definitely back that up, mate.
Yeah, absolutely. He had a torrid time, didn't he, Davies, yesterday? Lots of comments about Davies, and another one you feel sorry for because it was a strange decision at the time, wasn't it? A lot of people said they was confused over why he was brought in because he wasn't necessarily that wing-back type player that we play. And, it's strange, isn't it? What do you think about him, John, so far?
I think I reckon he's worth his money because he's transferred his value onto Danny Rose.
Yeah.
That's the only... he's solid enough, Ben Davies, but... I think when a player comes in, 10 million for a fullback, even in today's market, that's a lot of money. And I think, we're all hoping that the signing of Trippier does the same for Walker. But yeah, Danny Rose is definitely the better player, definitely. Yeah,
spot on, absolutely. I think that Danny Rose, going back a couple of years ago, was one that was almost mocked at times, wasn't he? And he's just the amount that guy's come on is unbelievable. Well,
if he'd have gone last summer, no one would have batted an eyelid, would they, to be honest?
Spot on, mate. Spot on.
And he would have gone for hardly anything, I suppose. Not, 2 million, 3 million, maybe.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm sure Levy would find a way to squeeze a couple of million. More than his job's worth to let him go for nothing. But listen, lads, we've come to the end of the show, and for another week, our therapy session is now closed. The mystery voice that you heard at the top of the show was Gary Mabbott, the great Spurs captain. We mentioned the 91 Cup final. There you go. And the voice you heard earlier in the show was Gary Mabbott. So well done if you got that one correct. We'll be back next Sunday as always. Don't forget to follow us, guys, on Twitter at @e_Spurs and on the Facebook page, e-Spurs page, all one word. And there are loads of other ways to get in touch with us. My thanks, as always, to the e-Spurs team, to Mark and John. Thanks, lads.
Cheers, guys.
Cheers, lads. And to our guest tonight, Spurs supporter and hopefully we'll have him back on the show in the future. So, John, cheers, mate.
Nice one, thank you. Well, I just wanted to add one thing right at the end, just to cheer everyone up a little bit. Give Levy his due, and Pochettino, really. You mentioned earlier, I didn't want to interject, being a new one. I thought I'd leave you to it. But, we're saying about the top 4. That is out of our reach, yeah. But I think the reason why Levy's definitely going to stick with him is because he did hit our ceiling, in my opinion, last season. Fifth for us is like the title for Man City, in my opinion.
Yeah, great.
And it's going to be the same again this season, really. I mean, especially if we don't bring in anyone of note in the next week and we still manage it, then he's bettered last season, in my opinion. We had a cup final last year. Let's not forget that. The Sheffield United game was amazing. We've got the new stadium to look forward to. This is actually the club's longest unbroken run in Europe. We're on at the minute as well. I remember the dark days of Alan Sugar, so I can't get too damn beat. I'll get the ump for 10 minutes at full time, but couldn't be without the Spurs. Big part of my life, always will be, and I don't do it because I have to. I do it because I really want to.
Absolutely, mate. Brilliant way to end the show, and as you say there, mate, we don't get a choice over this, do we? But there's no sort of get out clause of supporting Spurs, is there? Unfortunately. No. So through thick and thin, we carry on, and we have a moan for an hour every Sunday night, and then we're back in front of the TV watching them again and having another moan the following week. So we love them regardless, and let the support continue. John, it's been a pleasure, mate. Cheers for coming on.
Nice one. Thanks for having me. I've enjoyed it.
Brilliant stuff. Don't forget, give us a follow on the social media, guys. And if you've got anything to say about the show, get in touch with us. And we'll be back next Sunday. Coatsy and AD will be back after the Everton game. We'll be talking about that. Other than that, guys, have a great week. And as always, come on, you Spurs.